So a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, a while ago at this point, I put out a video analyzing the Old Testament atrocities debate between Dan Barker and Randal Rauser. Now, in the comments section, one Spartan Theology said to me, quote, "Also, I'm not so sure the difficult passages are as simple to address as you make it seem." Yes, he bullied me. You see that right there. It's bullying. It's a form of bullying. I understand that. He was bullying you straight up, Craig. I understand that. And I reported that comment to YouTube. And hopefully they'll flag it and they'll deal with them appropriately. But the question is, does he have a point? And here's what you need to realize. If you're one of these people, now Spartan's a Christian, and most of the people who are listening to me there's a few atheists who are listening to my channels, but as Christians, I think it's really important that we recognize what they have been doing with these Old Testament atrocities debates for well nigh 20 years. They have been waging an ongoing propaganda campaign against Christianity. These are not good faith debates for the most part. Every once in a rare while there will be, but for the most part they aren't. They're a propaganda campaign against Christianity that they've been waging very successfully. And the reason why I focused on this Dan Barker debate versus Randal Rauser, and I normally avoid these, even analyzing these ones, because I don't really want to give them that much life. But the reason why I focused on this one is because Dan Barker actually framed it correctly. And he did us the favor of framing it the right way. If I was a practicing Christian, how am I to view this Bible, and how am I to view, is God speaking to me through this text? Now, framed like that is all I meant, Spartan. It is literally easy to reconcile these scriptures. It's literally simple. Yes, it's simple. Why? Because you do not have to account for every stray sentence of the Old Testament and even the challenging parts of the New. You just acknowledge there are challenging parts of the Old Testament. And the reason why they've made so much hay about it is because implicit in their debates and their strategies is a conflict. God cannot exist. Why not? Because there are all these challenging scriptures in the Old Testament. Now, it doesn't make sense when you spell it out in the plain light of day. That's why it's a propaganda campaign. There could be challenging scriptures in the Old Testament. That can be a fact, and let's just say that is a fact. And God can exist at the exact same time. Both of those things can be true at the exact same time. If you are going to engage in these debates, you need to make that perfectly crystal clear right from the start. These are not a challenge to the ontology or challenge to the proposition God exists. They are just something to think about. They're just something to wrestle with and think about. You don't have to actually answer them. You really don't. And, I mean, if you're a biblical scholar and that's your game, fine. And there are books that wrestle with these things. Someday I'll probably get around to reading, I don't even know who the good ones are. John Walton, I guess, and Don Draper? Is that right? That's my advice. I don't know, Don Draper or somebody like that. There's a couple of people that are supposed to be good at this. And I've sat in and watched some of their debates, and basically I don't even really resonate with the debates. Why? Because there is a practical down-to-earth. Why I focused on this particular debate is Dan Barker framed it the correct way. The only way that's really important and relevant if you're a practicing Christian. How do I know if God is speaking to me? And it's simple, it's easy to figure that out. Easy. Easy. Couldn't be easier. And I'll give you an example from my real world, from my actual life, and I promise you this is true. When I became a Christian, okay, I've told the story about how I became a Christian, but I was a really committed Christian, going to church all the time and really, really involved in what we call the things of God for, a while. Before I even knew that there were these type of quote-unquote challenging scriptures in the Old Testament. These aren't that well known in churches. Be aware of that. They're esoterica to a certain degree, and they've been dug out of obscurity by the atheists for a reason. And one of the things that Dan Barker said is he said Christians cherry-pick the good scriptures. No, that is not true. It is the atheists and the anti-theists who cherry-pick the bad scriptures. If you listen to some of them talk, you would think the only thing the Old Testament is a handbook for slavery. How to care for your slaves and what to do with your slaves. It's not. It's 5 sentences or so in the Old Testament. Even going to the book of Exodus, there's only 2 sentences. As far as I know, maybe 3, tops. about slavery in the book of Exodus itself. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus is actually one of my favorite books of the Bible. It's really powerful, interesting stuff. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in there. You know, there's the whole plagues and things like that. There's the whole Song of the Sea, Exodus 15. There's parts in Exodus 19 that I go back to time and time again because I find them really cool, powerful, and interesting parts of the Bible. There's a whole theophany in there. Exodus 19 is one of my favorite parts, where the mountain that cannot be touched. And now, there is maybe a handful of sentences about slavery. And if you listen to most anti-theists, a huge bunch of atheists talk about the book, you'd think the only thing that's going on in the Old Testament is that all it's about is, slaves. Why? Because they waged this propaganda campaign so successfully. And we need to stop the propaganda campaign. That's the most important thing. As a practicing Christian, it is really easy to reconcile these scriptures, I promise. Now, this is a true story from my own life. So I'm reading the Bible just as a young rapscallion Christian, just a young innocent ingenue Christian, well, not that young and not that innocent, but I was only very recently had become a Christian. Maybe 5 years into Christianity. I came upon some of these things organically in reading the Bible. Didn't know they were there. And what happened? They tripped me out. One of the ones I stumbled upon organically. I didn't know about these things before I got on Twitter. And I didn't know about these things before I started engaging in apologetics. These are not that well known out there in the real world at your church. Go at your church and canvass the people at your church and ask them about the Amalekites. Ask them about 1 Samuel. Ask them about, I swear to God, go ask them if you don't believe me. You know, if you go to church this Sunday, I'm not going to church, coronavirus. All right, well, when you're Zooming your church this Sunday, take the cat thing off. Don't go as a cat. Inside joke. And when you Zoom meet with your church this Sunday, ask them who the Amalekites are. 85% of the people at your own church where you go right now are going to go, who are the Amalekites and what are you talking about? The only way it usually comes up in church is Moses, when you put his hand, starts praying, and when you let his hands drop, they start losing the battle. That's the only time I've ever heard it referenced in an actual church. The Amalekites. I think that's in Exodus too. I think it's like Exodus 20 or something. So, anyways, getting back to the point. I'm a practicing Christian, and I'm reading the Bible. And I organically, without even knowing it was going to be there, came about the Elisha and the bears. He sicks the bears on the kids. Now that one is a really weird one. It's really hard to reconcile. And when you come upon it organically, it really trips you out. You're like, what on earth is this? But I came upon it organically as a committed Christian and a grown adult and a reasonable human being. So that's exactly what I said to myself. What on earth is this supposed to mean? Like what? And then you try to be a good Christian about it. You're like, God, what are you trying to say to me with this? And you can't come up with any really good answer. What on earth? What is it supposed to mean? So what you do as a rational adult and a normal human being, if you're really committed to Christianity, is you put it on the back burner. And you say, I'm going to get to this later, and I'll go look at what some important scholar has to say about this. So I went a couple times and dug in and read about the Elisha and the bears, and the long and the short of it is I've never seen anybody reconcile that in any way that I find satisfying. I'm like, okay, well, that's a stretch. Yeah, I'm not really sure if I buy that. All right, well, you're reaching there a little bit. And that's the problem with these debates. If you go into these debates like, I got a really slam dunk answer for this challenging part of the Old Testament, and you don't, which you probably won't, you're going to get beat. You're going to get beat, and by extension, make yourself look bad in the entire Christian community. And we need not do it at all. That's the thing that I'm actually preaching, that we need not do it at all. Why? Because I'm not sure if there's a good answer out there for that particular challenging scripture. I'm really not. I mean, does anybody have a good, apologetic for that? And most of the atheists who are doing these Old Testament atrocities debates are not entering them in good faith. I promise. And I got hip to that the first time I tried. I tried to reconcile the slavery one. And then I realized that the guy was just using it as a cudgel to try and go a lot of weird places, like to try and make me endorse slavery, and like, well, I think it's really, really awful that you would endorse slavery. What on earth are you talking about? I even made a video about Matt Dillahunty, and like, this is the only video that I made that got north of 1,000 views. It was about his debate with, got something like 5,000 views. It was the debate with Jordan Peterson. And for some reason, I put it in there because a huge part of what Matt Dillahunty does on the Atheist Experience is move everybody to the Old Testament slavery debate. I swear to God, that's a huge part of what he does. It's a huge part of what he does. And what people ever fail to notice is that the Old Testament can, let's just say for argument's sake, that the Old Testament in fact endorses slavery. Fine, fair enough. It is irrelevant to the proposition God exists. You need to continuously point that out. You need to continuously point that out. If you're not a Bible literalist, this is easy to do. But how I reconciled the Elisha and the bear thing, this is I put it on the back burner. And I said to myself, someday I'm gonna find an apologetic that reconciles this. And then I read like one or two, like, looked it up on whatever Christian website I went to. This was a long time ago. I didn't even know where this was like, but I organically came upon it as a new Christian. And it threw me for a night, for an evening. That's how long it literally threw me, for 2 hours. I was like, that's a really weird part of the Bible. I wonder what that means. And I put it on the back burner. I investigated a little the next day and that week, and then I kind of got bored of thinking about it and forgot all about it. That's a really good way of reconciling it. Put it on the back burner. Why? Because not all of these have really good answers. And if you play their game, you are pretending that these are groundbreakingly important to Christianity, to the success or failure of the proposition God exists, and you're playing their game. You're playing their game and you're going to get beat. You're going to lose the debate, promise. You've never seen any Christian win the Old Testament debate. Why? Because it's stacked against you right from the jump. It either looks like you are minimizing the atrocities, or not clearly dealing with what the text says. That's how the debate is structured. And then if you give a halfway decent answer on one of them, they'll just move you to the next one. That's it. That's how those debates always play out. Okay, well, you're immoral as a Christian, here's your God is so immoral. And people use it to accomplish a lot of propaganda. So what we actually need to do, is address the whole structure of these debates. Okay? If you're not a literalist, and I gotta use the term wussy Christian Spartan, I apologize, it is the correct term to use. Yes, it is kind of a pejorative, but that's half the point. Because the liberal Christians, if I use the term liberal Christian, people always think I mean liberal, voting for Hillary Clinton type liberal. And usually that's true, but it's not always true. It means like a softer version of Christianity, a watered down version of Christianity, which is appropriate to some degree. Wussy Christian is the right word. Why? Because it's somewhat of a pejorative, but it's a playful pejorative. It's the right word to use. Why? Because the big problem with the liberal and the progressive Christians is that they spend a lot of their time and energy fighting against other Christians. Bang! That's a big problem. And that's a problem that almost all of them engage in. Not some of the ones that are coming up nowadays, and I'm going to be influencing them to stop doing that. Why? Because it's counterproductive. Yes, you can be too much of a fundamentalist. Everybody understands that. But the danger here is you do not want to take sides against Christianity. You do not want to give too much. I don't know. There's a reason why people don't like wussy Christians, okay? And why wussy Christians are so controversial, and it has a lot to do with their behavior in this space. You can take the penultimate example, the ultimate example of him is that guy, what's his name? Rob Bell. Rob Bell is the ultimate one. He was kind of excommunicated by the fundamentalists, but he's also very much anti-fundamentalist in his approach. Now that's somewhat of a choice. He doesn't believe anything all that radically different than Jordan Peterson. Matter of fact, Jordan Peterson is probably doctrinally a lot less satisfying if he were a preacher. But Rob Bell gets himself into a lot of trouble. Why? Because he was taking up swords against fundamentalism. instead of trying to just ask them to tone it down a little. That's it. There's a path of reconciliation here, but it's got to start with the wussy Christian. It's got to. I'm not anti-wussy Christian, Spartan. I'm really not. I'm pro-wussy Christian. I think wussy Christians are the answer to some degree. But there needs to be some sort of a... Put it this way. There are three people who I know. John Depew, Ron from Arkansas. Ron from Arkansas. I thought it was funny. And what you love, and Dry Apologist. Now, all three of them are batting around in an area like where in between a conservative Christianity and a wussy Christianity. And they're all kind of trying to reconcile it out in a way that I think is the right way to do it. How John titles his channel is actually the right thing to be thinking about. A Christianity you can live with or something like that. Now that's the right approach. And what the details are about what we ultimately decided, this is the really truly important. If you want a really good example of what I'm talking about, there's a debate between Dry Apologist and Jim Majors. And what Dry Apologist was trying to do in that debate, I think is the right idea. He was basically trying to say, and he's using it off a Catholic tradition, which makes him, yeah, he's a heretic. See? Yeah, exactly. If we start fighting, we'll fight about everything. That's the point. The wussy Christians want to fight too, which defeats the whole purpose of being a milquetoast Christian. It defeats the whole point. They want to fight too, except they want to fight against the fundamentalists. But we should stop doing that altogether. Okay? The instructive thing to see in that debate between Jim Majors and Dry Apologist is Dry Apologist is trying to say, like, these are the things doctrinally and for a Christian. These are the absolute essentials. These are sacrosanct and these must never be surrendered. And then these other things are negotiable. Now, what you ultimately put in the category of these are the truths that we hold to be self-evident, these actually make you a Christian, that's up to you to some degree. I don't care what you choose. And the Bible doesn't either. It says, let every man be thoroughly convinced in his own heart. You prayerfully consider the Bible. You live in accordance with, you try and work out your salvation with fear and trembling, as they say. And you try and reconcile for yourself. Ultimately, it's going to be you and you alone you are going to stand or fall on. It's not relevant what other people believe. That's the part that the wussy Christians don't get. They want to become... they're not really there yet, but I can see them going the same way that the wokesters go, where they become fundamentalists about really weird different things. They're not there yet. I need to use the term wussy Christian. It's got to be somewhat of a pejorative. But I'm very pro-wussy Christian, Spartan, so don't worry about it. I really am. I think that's the right idea. Somewhere in between Dry Apologist, Ron, and John Depew is a working out of the salvation with fear and trembling and trying to get it right. Now, what ultimately anyone decides, this is the most important part of being a Christian, this is sacrosanct. Ultimately, this is sacrosanct to me. Don't think it can go any other way. This is really important part about being a Christian to me. Where people start to get in trouble is they go, this is a really important part of being a Christian to you. And you better believe me. Or I'm going to hurt. That's where dogma and dogmatic and rigid ideology is born. Where you start making about you convincing everybody else rather than you actually really trying to work it out for yourself. Does that make sense? I think that actually makes sense. I really do. I think that's really ultimately I'm not against people coming to their own conclusions about, big theological issues. I'm really not. And I'll give them a fair hearing and I'll listen to it. But ultimately I'm going to decide for myself and I'm going to decide, prayerfully consider all of the questions and decide for myself. And ultimately I think all of you should be doing that. Not basing it off of somebody else. What do you honestly think God is telling you? That's what I really think you should be standing or falling on. And then what everybody else believes, you don't have to waste your time convincing them why, because who on earth cares? Who on earth cares what any one single person on Twitter or YouTube believes about anything under the sun? Nobody. It's only important to you. Your truth-finding mechanisms are only ultimately important to you and how you live your life and what type of Christian and what type of human being are you going to be. That's the really important question, not what everybody else believes. So... I think that all made sense. Did I lose the thread of the original? It's easy, Spartan. The reason why I made this video is to object to you bullying me. You bully me too much, and because I actually think that we need to deal with how these arguments are going in the space. 20 years they've been cleaning up with this, and they've been causing a lot of harm. And even to the point, if you go look at Twitter sometimes, I see people who publicly wrestle with doubts and go like, I'm really starting to doubt Christianity. A huge chunk of what they even say is there are these scriptures in the Old Testament, and I want to just tell them, stop. Are you insane? You're listening to them. These are irrelevant. I was a practicing, committed Christian, and I discovered these things by myself. And I didn't go, oh my God, all the miraculous experience I just had over the past 10 years must not have happened. Why? Because here's this really weird part about Elisha and the bears. That's the logic of it. It's imbecile logic. Imbecile logic. I've seen things, and at some point I will start telling you about miracles I've seen with my own eyes, and a lot of people are going to believe me. Why? Is it God's honest truth? That's why. It's really, really complicated. That sounds really complicated, Greg. Yeah, God's honest truth, a lot of people are going to believe me. But how much of an idiot would I have been if I thought that this weird part of the Old Testament is challenging to my faith? That's ridiculous. That's a narrative. And that's a narrative that they've been pushing on everybody for a long period of time. And that narrative is destructive. And that's what ultimately needs to be defeated. So if you're going to go into the Old Testament debates, don't try to reconcile, don't hand-wring. Ultimately, the wussy Christian is a really, really powerful position in these type of debates, because if you're not a literalist, you don't need to answer all this. But you need to make that voice known. This doesn't need to be answered. That's the only mistake Randal Rauser made, is he did a lot of hand-wringing. And if you go watch how atheists respond. If you don't believe me, don't just watch these debates. Go watch them on Pine Creek's channel and read the chats, because that's what I do. And see how they are resonating and how they are landing and what they are being used to accomplish in people's minds that people think is rooted in truth and isn't. That's my point. That's my point. They're accomplishing a lot through this. A lot of fake, I'm really struggling with Christianity over things that have nothing to do with the proposition God exists at all. Zero. And people who are somewhat good-intentioned and they seem to be sincere human beings, I've seen them struggle out loud on Twitter. And one of the things they say they're struggling with is all these challenging questions in the Old Testament. And I'm like, wow, they got inside of your head. They got inside of your head and they did a jujitsu on you because these things are just not that important. Bang. Just like that. So, I think that all made sense. If not, doesn't really matter. Tomorrow I'll make another video. Spartan's going to bully me either way, guys. That's all he does. All he does is persecute me. He's jealous because while his TikToks are good, his TikTok game is strong. I'll give him that. But I think a lot of it is envy. He sees that I'm. I don't know. I think that made sense. Spartan, let me know if it made sense. The wussy Christian is somewhat of a pejorative, but it's got to be that way. It's got to be that way. Ultimately, I'm on the side of the wussy Christian. I'm in favor of them. I really am. I think that there's certain types of wussy Christians that there's a certain type of secular Christian is how Philip Goff, for example, describes himself. And if you go listen to him talk, he's basically an atheist or a non-believer, but it's really hard to explain. I'll make videos about it in the future. So anyways, I'll wrap it up for now. That is all, kids. The Mass has ended. Let me know if this was all clear and if you think I was hitting the nail on the head. And if you don't think I was doing that, well, you're mistaken. I was really nailing it. I don't know what you're thinking about, because I think I really nailed it again. Gee, what a coincidence. All right, so there you have it, kids. That's all for now. The Mass has ended. Go in peace. Amen.